Hey, I'm Zach Wolfer doing yet another vlog about the Berenstain Bears, one of my YouTube sources. But this time I'm not comparing one of the books to the TV adaptation. Instead, I'm going to give a review on a certain Berenstain Bears book that came out after both TV shows, and after they switched publishers from Random House to HarperCollins and its subsidiaries. Look at that! The Berenstain Bears Computer Trouble from 2010. And don't worry, this isn't one of those Living Lights books. Even though it doesn't have that branding, this is basically similar to the rest of the First Time books, since they were called under Random House. Even though that name was recently retired from the titles published by Random House in favor of the Berenstain Bears Classics brand. You see? Now this title is from Jan and Mike Berenstain, since it was 5 years after Stan's death and 2 years before Jan died, leaving Mike Berenstain to continue the series himself. He began assisting his parents, Stan and Jan, on the Berenstain Bears books in the early 1990s, uncredited at first, likely doing much of the illustrating, given his style here that hasn't really changed since the books in the early 90s. He really captured an example of ugly crying so well here. Even more so when Sister cried in Too Much Birthday and No Girls Allowed. It starts off with internet rules for cubs. Of course, back in my day, there was no such thing as social media. The internet was generally for research, early forms of online shopping, some forms of fun and games, and of course pornography, but I was too young to know about that. And we only had one computer in the house back then, the family PC, if you will, so we all had to take turns. Instant messaging and social networking wasn't really till after I'd already started high school, and so I was kind of old enough for that, as long as I still stayed sane. But enough childhood reminiscing for the moment. I do agree that these rules are very sensible for today's cubs and kids. Look, this one here. Never send your picture or anything else to someone online without your parents' permission. Of course, I'm an adult, but most of my photos online involve me in fursuit like this, or some other cosplay that completely covers the head. And of course, we still have the classic poem before the story. Computers have their uses. They're great for work and play, but it's not a good idea just to stare at them all day. That's all too true, and we will see why in this story. I like this title page illustration. I wonder what it is they're looking at. But now, onto the story, where it was Papa Bear who first brought a computer home to the Bear family's treehouse for his furniture business. As such, he sets it up in his garage workshop. Now that I found a little unusual, how it's implied they didn't have a computer until the late 2000s. By that time, having a computer was absolutely mandatory. In addition to bills and such, nearly everyone had email by that time, and you use it for job searching and other career-related stuff too. Also, I'm reminded of the 1994 PC game, The Berenstain Bears Learning at Home Volume 2, where we saw the Bear family indeed had a personal computer in their den, used to teach some computer concepts.
You can use a mouse to point and click, or use the keyboard, take your pick.
And you can even play the Bee Invaders mini-game. Well, that game was kind of a different continuity from the books and both TV shows, like the Bear family having Snuff as their pet dog, who's supposed to be Cousin Freddy's dog, and the new character Bumbler Bear. So moving on, Brother and Sister Bear often come into Papa's workshop and play video games on that computer, and soon they need their own computers for schoolwork, and then email, websites, instant messaging, and social networking soon follow. Look at how both brother and sister each have their own PC in their bedroom. You'd think the Bears could save a little money to have brother and sister Bear share a computer in their room. arranging times for using it for homework and certain online fun, maybe even play games together like they were in the workshop. I mean, me and my brother often enjoy playing computer games as a team, especially those humongous entertainment point-and-click junior adventure games. Definitely more fun than playing them alone. And by the time we were in high school, me and my brother shared a PC after our dad got his own computer that he and our own mom would share for work and gaming and bills and stuff like that. It wasn't until me and my brother were older and started going to college where we got our own laptop computers, and we had a Wi-Fi network installed in our old house. Our current home also does, but since it's a so much simpler ranch house, as you might have seen, me and my dad are able to run an Ethernet connection up to our bedrooms for a more stable connection. Like when me and my brother use our laptops in clamshell or desktop mode. And when I was often using that quad-core Mac Mini desktop. Speaking of which, hopefully next spring I can buy one of those new M4 chip Mac Minis and really take my Apple Silicon computing up a notch. And then Mama Bear here discovers eBear, which is the Berenstain Bear's equivalent to eBay. And so she gets her own computer for buying and selling things there. In addition to the buying, I could see her selling some of her quilts. Kind of like in the book Mama's New Job, where she had her own little quilting store we never heard of again after that. Also, look at how they're using big boxy desktop PCs with CRT monitors in 2010. By that time, CRT computer monitors were considered old-fashioned, with more and more desktops now using LCD displays. Granted, in the early 2010s, I often still use an old eMac G4 desktop with built-in CRT, in addition to a white polycarbonate MacBook. But that was more like a case of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So in real life, some households would still be using computers with CRT monitors, but those would be holdovers from the early to mid-2000s or even the late 1990s, compared to these supposedly being new computers. And it's kind of unusual, too, given the cover artwork showed what looked like LCD computer monitors. Also, the Berenstain Bears universe is kind of a retro one. Like with Mama and Papa Bear's fashions, their old red convertible, even the trains still using old steam locomotives. So maybe these 1990s computers in 2010 is an example of that. I'm also reminded in the later seasons of Arthur, where the Reed family still used the big boxy PC CRT monitor. Even though the rest of the technology in that show was updated, and they showed some other characters using computers with LCD displays. But enough talk about ancient computer technology. Look at how even little Honey Bear has a toy computer for playing simple games on. And it seems to Papa, the whole family spends most of their time in front of computers. And I could see that issue there, as in my family, we were sometimes like that since me and my brother reached adulthood. But of course, my dad works in the IT business, and I'm also in the same career path as him. But we don't want to sit in front of computers and tablets and such all day, like Papa Bear here, coming in from his shop with a headache from staring at the computer too long. See, this is why at least every hour I get up and away from the computer, walk around the house a bit. Even at my former computer tech job, every hour I get up and move around to make it easier on my eyes and muscles. And at least my boss understood that your health is important. And how was Papa, who initially finally had enough of the computers, since he loves wood and working with his hands, and that's his business, but he did not love sitting in front of a computer. And then here, Papa finds Sister Bear in her room, crying her eyes out. Poor sister. It's because that punk of a classmate here, Billy Griswold, posted on Sister's Pawbook page that she is a fuzzy-faced hairball, and now they're saying they're in love. Sheesh. I agree with Papa there, computers being nothing but trouble. Such a... Also, isn't Sister Bear a little too young to be using Pawbook, the Berenstain Bears universe equivalent of Facebook? I mean, by this time in the book series, she was 8 years old, and even that's still too young for Facebook. I'm glad Facebook didn't really start and take off until after I started college. And even today, it can still be problematic, like that. And again, this is the same bear family that allowed a game of Spin the Bottle to be played at their daughter's 6th birthday party. And yes, the Too Much Birthday Story still gets some flack for that Spin the Bottle scene. And then Papa notices Brother Bear. He's playing loud music on his computer while he's browsing online for soccer gear when he's supposed to be doing his homework. Now all of a sudden, Sister and Brother Bear each have their own bedrooms. In subsequent books, brother and sister still share a bedroom, complete with their bunk bed, and have a few they even share with little Honey. So here, Papa reminds brother he should be doing his homework, but he's working on it in between checking out websites. I like brother's nervous face there. And yeah, multitasking like that is indeed tempting. I should know. Of course, in my day, I didn't really do much homework on the computer until I was in high school. And Mama is bidding on something on eBay. And then the doorbell rings, and what a coincidence! It's one of Mama's packages from eBay. Herb the mailman is delivering it, and he tells Papa that he should get that eBay thing with Mama under control. Otherwise, they're going to go broke. Yeah, I remember what that was like when I first set up my own eBay account almost 15 years ago. I love this illustration of Papa looking all exhausted in front of his computer with the big CRT monitor. And then after dinner, Papa comes up with an announcement. And here it's kind of neat, because in many of these books, Mama Bear is usually the voice of reason. So it's nice to see Papa take charge of the situation here. Since normally he's the typical bubbling father character. Though there were a few classic Berenstain Bears books where Papa is the one who smoothed things out. Like the infamous Messy Room and In the Dark and The Slumber Party. Usually Papa will end up getting involved in whatever calamity that comes involved with. Like in Too Much TV and Too Much Junk Food and Too Much Birthday. Or his attempts to try to resolve things lead to him yelling and shouting at the Cubs, like he get in a fight in the blame game in the homework castle, and of course get the gimmies. But here, Mama Bear is caught up in the same calamity as the Cubs with the computer trouble. Papa points out they're spending so much time on the computer with email, websites, Papa, gaming, and eBay that they don't even have time to say hello to each other these days. And Mama had been actually worrying about this very thing herself, finding herself somewhat unable to tear herself away from eBay. Again, it's all too relatable. So it's good to see her come to her senses this way. And then Papa says that the big problem is the internet, taking up too much time, getting you to spend too much money, and it can be dangerous. Those are all too true. And there is conveniently a front page article in the evening newspaper about internet child safety problems. Papa says, it says here that people use the internet to get cubs to do things that aren't safe. Of course, to keep this book kid friendly, they don't go into detail what vicious deeds they could be doing. Now I like how this page looks. Patterned after a typical instant messaging application with the family members as pixelated icons. And Papa says he's going to turn off the internet except for 1 hour each day. Naturally, the Cubs say, only 1 hour? But Papa insists that it's plenty, as if you can't get done what you need to do in an hour, it's not worth doing. Well, sure, if you're a kid, that makes sense. But what if you're an adult like me? The internet is more important and useful to adults, and especially more so in these times. Like for doing taxes and paying bills and emailing and job searches, and stuff like that. Heck, during the COVID-19 pandemic at the start of this decade, that was when the internet proved really useful. I even saw some kind of cartoon drawing years ago of some guy reading this book to his child or younger sibling. And he claimed that only 1 hour of internet per day was basically child abuse. Of course, like I said, child internet usage is really different from when adults use it. But in some ways it's still important, like school-related stuff. I remember when the Telecommunications Act of 1996 made it so that all public schools should have some form of internet access, even if it was just in one big computer lab or something, like the case at one of my elementary schools. And again, the pandemic showed how important the internet can be when kids had to do remote online learning before it was safe for them to physically go back into school buildings. I'm surprised there hasn't been a Berenstain Bears story inspired by the pandemic. It would have been neat to see the Bear family deal with it. Didn't stop people from making a few parodies of it, like I did. Of course, Brother asks what they'll do instead. Papa reminds them of all what they used to do when playing outside. Like playing ball, go skateboarding, ride their bikes, fly kites, go fishing, go for a 5-mile hike, pick wildflowers, watch clouds, walk the dog, play with kittens, collect rocks, pretend they're space bears, run around circles and get dizzy, make mud pies, catch bugs, chase each other and scream. They did indeed do all that in the older books, and the computers made them forget all about those good times, and they do sound like fun to sister and brother. So the next day, that's pretty much what they do. Even getting Cousin Fred and Lizzie Bruin to leave their computers and join them at the playground. Of course they're cubs, and stuff like that is great fun for kids. Unless they make such a playground for grown-ups, of course. One that isn't a casino or anything like that. Yeah, they mustn't forget about those who are a kid at heart, like I often am. And after dinner that evening, brother and sister find that going online for just 1 hour is plenty of time after all. Oh look, now they're back to sharing a room, as always, albeit with their old computers each. And Papa doesn't need to waste time online to get his work done, doing some of the woodworking he loves. And Mama goes back to making a quilt, getting so involved she doesn't even go online during the internet hour. Freed from the spell of e-bear, as the book says. And then after that, they gather together in front of the fireplace, and they sit and read and talk like a good old-fashioned family should. Yeah, as I mentioned about Cousin Fred's dog Snuff being the Bear family's dog in that Learning at Home PC game, in the book since the early 90s and in the PBS and Nelvana animated series, this is their dog, Little Lady. No relation to the Disney one, of course. And they also have a cat named Gracie. They talk about what they've done that day and any future plans they may have, including Billy Griswold actually apologizing for calling Sister Fuzzy-Faced Hairball. Indeed, I remember the TV adaptation of The Big Blooper, and the Berenstain Bears consider furball a swear word. Though in the book version, they didn't. But that's for another video. Then they go to bed, and then the next evening, they decide instead of going online, they go to the movies while Grizzly Gramps and Gran look after Honey. The narration here says they did wind up sitting in front of a screen that evening, but it was a much, much bigger one. They got to eat popcorn, too. Yeah. Their movie options include Berenstain Bears universe versions of popular movies at the time, such as Pirates of the Caribbean, Harry Potter, and Spider-Bear. And they all agree on seeing Spider-Bear. I'm pretty sure it's specifically referring to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies of the 2000s. Maybe there's a Berenstain Bears version of Sam Raimi. Funny, given I did that spoof years ago with the 1990s Renaissance Pictures logo appearing at the end of the 1985 Berenstain Bears credits due to the Thunder and Lightning and the Southern Star logo. And there you have it. The Berenstain Bears' computer trouble and how they overcame it. It's a pretty interesting read, seeing how the Bear family dealt with newer technologies like computers. Funny enough, 11 years before this book was published, there was one of those big chapter books, The Berenstain Bears Lost in Cyberspace, and it used a somewhat similar plot. Only instead of it just Brother and Sister Bear, it involved Brother Bear's class at the Bear Country Elementary School being assigned laptops for schoolwork, but also getting really addicted to them and starting to have fun browsing online, especially the chat rooms. Remember those? Starting to forget about schoolwork and real life interactions with their grades starting to slip. Until Teacher Bob ultimately has to end that experiment. And it even presents similar rules about the internet, also referred to as cyberspace in that book, hence the name, Lost in Cyberspace. But during the experiment, one of the students ends up unwillingly being a big help in stopping a crime. So it isn't all bad. And it stresses that while it's easy to tap at phone lines, at the time it was harder to tap into an internet connection. And while the students can't use laptops anymore, they decide to set up a computer lab at the school where the students get a 1 hour period day on the PCs in there. And the Cubs like that as part of getting back into the real world. But it mostly focuses on Brother Bear and his friends and classmates, so Sister Bear only plays a small role, and Mama and Papa are nowhere to be found in the story. So I can see why Jan and Mike Berenstain decided to revisit the idea of computer trouble, but just focusing on the main Bear family. Well, of course, Lost in Cyberspace was in 1999, but today we often have public schools assigning students such computers and similar devices, such as Chromebooks, or even iPads and their Android equivalents. You see, the company I worked for till recently, we often got such devices from school districts to be recycled or resold, depending on the shape they were in. With the latter, we'd refurbish them. Schools began doing this shortly after the Computer Trouble book was published. And as I mentioned already, the pandemic further proved how useful the internet is for education purposes and other life skills responsibilities. But I guess that about covers everything. As always, keep watching this YouTube channel to see what I do next, or maybe Sam Valentino or Disney's Big Bad Wolf or something.